So, hello everyone, it's nice to see you. Now, you might have brought some questions, so now's the time to ask, as usual. And until the question comes up, feel free to just be with your breath, letting go of thoughts, past, future. Yes?
Something that's been on my mind is kind of like when you know what the right thing to do is, most of like small decisions say like, you shouldn't sleep in, or you shouldn't take a nap because whatever, like, or you might be like eating a certain food because it will upset your stomach later, kind of, you won't feel great. Like kind of decisions like that the end result is something negative, but we still do them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering like why. But sometimes I'll do that and I'm like, I know if I open my phone and start scrolling, I'm gonna get caught and scroll and watch videos for 4 hours or however long. So why do I even start? I'll tell myself, okay, I'll keep going. Alright, I'm gonna keep going. So it's almost like that battle and why I don't know why it keeps happening.
So why do we do things of which we know that they will lead to pain, to suffering, to uncomfortable situations? Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe partly because they are habits, so they have a certain type of automatism to them. So they just run in the background without us even being aware of them. That's probably the second part of the reason. It is because we lack awareness at the moment of actually committing the action. We do not question it at that moment. So mindfulness kicks in later, after you ate the food, after you've scrolled through the phone. So mindfulness is quite slow, usually, for people. It's not very fast. So it kicks in always, very often after the action or after the result of the action. And then we look back and we think, oh, what have I done? Or what have I said just now? We see the reaction of what you just said, for example, and you think, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. But before you were saying that, there was no mindfulness. So you just kind of reacted. It's just an impulsive thing that comes up. Another reason is that we very often have these hopes. We do something because we hope in some way that this will give us some sort of happiness or some sort of benefit. The benefit could be just an avoidance of suffering. If I do that, I don't have to confront the actual problem. I kind of postpone that for a little while. Instead, I deal with artificially created problems later. Another reason could be also that we do these things because we're somehow secretly after the result. For example, you know you shouldn't eat the ice cream, but you still do it because the point of that whole thing is exactly that. You know you shouldn't do it, you do it, and you feel bad about yourself. You see? And some people, they constantly need to have that feeling again because it's a major part of who they think they are. A shameful person that doesn't deserve to be happy. A person that continuously fails. Oh man, I failed again. I'm such a failure. Why do I always have to fail? And maybe that's a big part of your personality, and therefore to let go of that would equal death. It's a little death. And we're afraid of death. We don't want to lose who we are, even if who we are is highly unpleasant. It's who we are, after all. And if it's like somebody that does something repeatedly, and then in order to complain about myself and to feel a lack of self-respect and a lack of self-esteem, in the end, if that's the goal, then I just keep doing it. That whole pattern of seeking out an action that makes me feel bad about myself. So that's another reason. So as you see that, as you analyze things, you start to understand them. So I think the best thing that you could do for yourself, because I can't tell you what is it for you, right? You can only know yourself. Nobody else can know you. So you want to investigate and take it, as we've already discussed, taking small steps, not taking big steps, trying to achieve the end of the pattern within a week or something like that. So no utopian ideals, but just a small step each day that gives you the chance to actually see, what am I doing here? What will the end result be? And I think you're already on track when you think of the future. Usually I don't recommend to think of the future, but there is one exception, we can say. That is, when you're committing an action, ask yourself, where does that lead? Or, what does that make stronger within me? If I go through with this, what will be strengthened? Do you notice? You probably already get some slight understanding now what you're doing, right? Like, because every single time when you're doing that, something becomes stronger. Or something gets exercised. You're exercising that one muscle. You know best what kind of muscle that is. Now, once you understand what that is, then you can tackle it in various different ways. You can either just simply let it go if you're strong enough. You just drop it. You let it die. But for that, you need to have a relatively stable mind already, so you need to be firmly established in your practice. If that's not yet the case, then maybe you can apply an antidote. Let's say it's about the pattern of I must disappoint myself as a person, because I need to feel disappointed by myself. When I look at myself, I see nothing but disappointment. Then maybe it would be good to train yourself to see your strengths a little bit more. Like, where have you actually done something that you respect? And then pay attention to that more and more. The more you pay attention, the more you're shifting your attention over to the opposite of that old habit pattern. The weaker the old habit becomes, and the stronger the new one becomes. And along with that, practice to be mindful of what you're doing. Like, if that certain thing happens in specific situations, like every time when you're out with your friends and eat dinner, let's say that, then it happens then. So then you need to be extra vigilant during that time. And you need to be prepared. I know what's going to happen. As soon as I will see that dessert, I'm going to go for that. And here's what I'm going to do when I feel the urge to just get that. I'm going to just say no. Because, and now you see the future again, I'm giving you a very simplistic example, yes? So, because then I see the future again, and I will see, tonight I will go to bed, and I will look back on this, and I will see, I've been successful this time. And I'll feel really good about myself, for a change. Like, how would that be if you were to tackle that differently? How would you feel about yourself in the future? You use the same technique. Rather than, I know where that will lead me and then I will feel bad again, but I kind of helplessly still do it. Instead, ask yourself, what would be the outcome if you don't? How would you feel about yourself then? Or if it is about you needing to do something, then what would be the outcome of actually doing it, instead of just pushing it forward, postponing it, procrastinating? How would you actually feel if it was done? So that's applying an antidote to it, like working from that way. So that's the two ways of working with these things that I would spontaneously now recommend. I would probably do something like that, yes. Do you think that's in some way helpful? Yeah? Good. And back to the breath. Drop everything I just said. Don't dwell on it. Just let it go, let it die. Just back to the practice all the time. You do it like this in daily life. Conversation is over, back to the breath. Keeping the mind calm. Nourishing the energy. Keeping quiet. Any other questions? Yes?
So, sort of related to what you just spoke about, there are days where I'm very comfortable with myself and decisions and just feeling pretty good and confident. And then there are days where I just keep questioning my decisions and my choices. And then when I sometimes try to work around changing my personality because I feel like something needs to be tweaked, it doesn't necessarily work to my advantage. But then it keeps popping in my head that maybe I do need to do this, maybe I do need to be softer or kinder. But yet, it confuses me, Do I go forward and try to work at changing it, or do I accept it and just take it one day at a time? I don't know if it's clear what I'm saying.
Kind of. Let me try to rephrase that a little bit.
Okay.
So it's a question that when you notice a negative personality trait and you want to change it, then the question is, should I actually change it, or should I just be kind to myself and leave it be?
Pretty much.
Yeah? Why not both? Why not accept it with kindness and let it be and acknowledge that this is a vital thing about you? It's there, it's in your face, and it creates a certain outcome every single time that is maybe undesirable, is maybe an outcome that's harmful not only for you but others too. Then it is very wise and skillful to actually overcome that. But you cannot overcome it aggressively. But you can overcome it with kindness, with patience, and with applying the right methods consistently. Does that make sense? So you combine both. You're not just only either kindness and letting it be, so to say, or changing it. Kindness very often implies also an action that follows. Yeah. Think of a mother that sees her child as it runs towards the train tracks. Now the mother is facing the same choice. Should I just be kind and let it be? Or should I change the situation? If you were a child and you were mothering yourself, then what would you do when you see that certain actions create illness, problems, trouble? Then it might be wise to actually hold yourself back from committing those actions or cultivating the opposite action instead. But all that requires very strong mindfulness. You need to be very aware of yourself. That comes through practice. And you need to be quite fearless when it comes to being uncomfortable, because not following your habits will make you feel really uncomfortable at first. Like you're saying no to yourself. If mom says no to the child, how would the child feel at first? Like uncomfortable. No candy, no, put that back into the shelf. The first reaction of the child is a tantrum, probably. Your mind will be the same. If you say no, you don't do that now, it's harmful, look into the future, that this will happen if you do that, then the mind will say, but I really want to, it feels so good. That you need to kind of protect your mind. This is really important. So mindfulness has this kind of parenting effect as well, in a very positive way. That's kindness. That's the role of kindness. Anyone want some ice cream? Now it's too late. So did that kind of answer the question a little bit, or make it a bit more clear?
I think it's my question that's not very clear.
You think? What's still in the fog?
Because I think what you're referring to is something that's pretty clear that it's not necessarily good for you. So it would make sense to put effort and train yourself and try to.
Yeah.
But what I'm referring to is I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad.
Ah, okay.
You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
like a personality trait.
Yeah. So if the action is not quite clear, the outcome is not clear, right?
Right.
So then maybe you still have the option of seeing where does the action come from. If you don't see where the action goes, potentially, where it will lead, you can still see where it comes from. And that gives you a very good indication of where it leads you. So let's say if the action comes from, again, I'm using a very coarse example, anger. Then the outcome of that action is related to anger every single time. So it's this kind of seed and fruit cause and result principle. So wherever your actions are coming from, or your rumination is coming from some place, maybe fear, maybe doubt, that will be enhanced. Maybe it's a game about keeping some doubt alive, like feeling doubtful about things. Maybe it's just about that. Like you need to observe very carefully and take a moment, particularly when you're at the fork in the road. And then now you need to make a decision. Do you need to make a decision? Do you not need to make it? Drop thinking. This is beautiful simile, actually. What if you're lost in the jungle? You don't know, it's a huge jungle, you don't know where to go. What do you do? What could you do to find your way out? Yes? Find the highest spot. You know the simile, right? So find the highest spot. That's exactly the way. When you're having a high point, then you can see very far. And then you can see, oh, over there is smoke, or there is a river or something like this. So that gives you an indication in what direction to move. It might still be wrong, but it is more hopeful and definitely better than just walking around in circles, right? So what is that? In the simile, what is the high point? The high point is inner silence. It means your mind devoid of thought. Your mind, when it has no words in it, you can understand yourself directly and very clearly, much more clearly than you could ever when there is noise in your mind, when the mind is busy talking to itself. Then it's impossible to understand things clearly. But this gives you more the opportunity to understand directly. Like, where does that come from, what I'm doing here? What's the real purpose of it?
Basically overthinking.
Yeah. Let go of thought. It's the most counterintuitive thing ever. Like, whenever anyone is lost in the jungle, all they want to do is just run in circles. Help, help, I'm lost, help, I'm lost. But what it really takes is doing this counterintuitive thing, climb a tree. Something like that. Go up on a hill and look first. Keep calm. That creates clarity every single time. Very often there's nothing needed to do. You don't need to do anything. But sometimes you need to, and then the answer that comes out of silence is often very highly creative and intuitive answer. It's very different from thought. You just know. And thank you very much for coming today. Have a wonderful evening and a nice weekend.